welcome back to Accelerate Bio, which is the podcast where we explore the frontier of decentralized science, biohacking, and the future of health. And this is all brought to you by BiohackerDAO and Data Lake. Today, we're diving deep into the future of scientific publishing and collaboration with the team behind ResearchHub. Joining us, we have got Jeffrey, the president of ResearchHub Foundation, and Johnny, the head of communication. And if you're wondering what ResearchHub is on a mission to revolutionize how scientific research is shared, funded, and reviewed using open collaboration and crypto incentives. But I'm gonna let the speakers, put it in much better words in a second. This is just my overview. But before we begin, let's just take 2 minutes to get some quick updates from our hosts. So Oliver from Data Lake, have you got, guys, anything exciting to share with the audience today?
Actually, last few weeks have been kind of the founder modes that, as we sometimes say, working on actually bringing new products. So there's a lot of actually stuff happening behind the scenes. I don't think there was a breakthrough, generally also speaking of DeSci, seems like stuff became a little bit quiet lately, and all of us, I'd say, agree on actually building cool stuff rather than, commercializing at the moment. I feel like there was a wave earlier on, but we'll see what happens actually after Eve Denver. That's happening tomorrow, right? When things might get again loud a bit, and X might be a little bit more living than nowadays. So from our side, it's just smooth sailing as of now, and glad to hear, what's new at BiohackerDAO.
I personally don't mind when things are a little bit not loud for a while. It allows for being clear-headed and just getting stuff done. But actually, we have got a lot of kind of events and loudness scheduled on our side. So talking about Eve Denver, we are attending that. I will be there personally from tomorrow onwards. We are also attending a bunch of side events at South by Southwest right after Eve Denver. So if anybody is there, just tap me on the shoulder or DM me on X at m_goes_distance. We can catch up, and there'll be actually a bunch of surprise little Biohacker DAO pop-up activities happening throughout those events. So could be exciting, hopefully. Let's see. And I think that's it. We can begin. Just for housekeeping, if anybody is not speaking, please keep your mics muted, because I heard a little bit of white noise earlier, and now it helped when you got muted. But yeah, let's begin. So maybe Jeffrey or Johnny, whichever one of you want to begin, just tell us a little bit about what ResearchHub is and why should we all be excited about it.
What about yourself?
And also,
Yeah, absolutely. So Research Hub is a platform. So at a high level, it's really just a platform that leverages incentives to generate quote unquote good scientific behavior. So, one thing that I think a lot of like the DeSci space does sometimes is we try to point out all the negatives that happen in the current traditional academic system. And, although there's negatives, there's also a bunch of positives as well too. And it's led to a ton of different therapeutic and medical device discoveries as it is. I think the intention really with DeSci is to how can we make this one much more efficient in doing what it does, and then two, how do we make sure that the value that is generated by scientists actually then goes and gets captured by scientists in the future, which I think there's a huge disparity between that. And so those are kind of some of the big things that Research Hub seeks to do. We have a kind of a token incentive model that allows us to, in the same way the NIH decides to fund certain things and researchers flock to those things, Research Hub, we have the power to also have an incentive that can guide kind of the behaviors of scientists. So, some of our goals ultimately align with that of the open science movement. So open accessing a lot of information, as well as just generally promoting pro reproducibility types of behaviors. So, you can dig into that a little bit more. But and then just myself personally, I come from a traditional academic background, so PhD in biomedical sciences. I did a 2 year stint as well in biotech, so got to see the industry as well as the academic side. And got really disenfranchised with particularly the publishing and peer review process when I was in my PhD program. Funding was also especially brutal. 9 month turnaround here in the U.S. Just to apply to the NIH, get your scores, see if you got funded, get the money in. So there's a lot of these inefficiencies that drove me to DeSci. And I was in the crypto space since 2017. Actually started mining Zcash when I was back in the 2017 era. And so I've been around both of those realms, and then thin intersection at the Venn diagram of science and at the time crypto. But now that kind of sliver is growing in the middle of that Venn diagram. So yeah, really excited to be helping lead the Research Hub Foundation, and we can talk more about what the foundation and the rest of the platform does. But yeah, Johnny, maybe I'll kick it over to you as well.
So yeah, Jeff did a good job basically explaining Research Hub. Um, I can just sort of introduce myself. So for me, I'm Johnny, or Jonathan, as you can see, but my job in Research Hub is really to communicate our mission, communicate our scientific product, communicate scientific findings, and a lot of the times actually our pre-registrations, that is before the finding. So what we're going to investigate and kind of communicate that down to the average consumer who can understand most of the science. So that's my job in the Research Hub, and how I got into decentralized science is really also my own journey as a student. I was a psychology student, and I think in my second year in the studies, psychology hit a replication crisis. It became really kind of famous. It even went into like normal media, and that's how I encountered it. Because I encountered it from normal media before my professors told me about it. I remember distinctly it was like a summer break, and that kind of put me on the path to be like question what I was doing. And I had already felt it in my own experience that somehow the rigorous isolation of variables was not actually practiced when we did experiments. So I was like, wait, this is weird. Like, is this just because we're training, or is this also going on in the real thing? And when this replication crisis thing came out, I realized it was normal for them to do it like they did. And I tried to figure out what was wrong. Went into philosophy, and in the philosophy teachings, I learned about the publishing, and I realized, oh, okay, publishing is one of the problems described by the people who are in the system. This publish or perish pressure is forcing them to do this, and the incentives for them are not right. So I learned about Bitcoin I think it was 1 year later, and I was like, wait, Bitcoin takes out the middleman and puts the people in charge that are using the software. So maybe we can do the same to science, take out the middleman that is putting the publishing pressure on them, and have them hold each other accountable, since after all in publishing it's really peer review that creates the final product. Why don't we have peer-to-peer review? And I kind of got into this space, had it only as an idea. Eventually I found Research Hub. Like in my own thinking, I was just kind of working on one journal until somebody told me it should be like a Reddit of science. And after I had this idea, I encountered Research Hub and realized, okay, this is it. And so met Patrick, the COO of Research Hub in Amsterdam, and at one of the first DeSci events, and talked with him, took him on a tour of beautiful Leiden University and the whole city, which has a nice history in science. And that kind of created for me the start to really put my thinking behind this project and try to involve myself in Research Hub. And I landed in this communication role because I'm a psychologist, but I'm also a philosopher. So as a philosopher, I have a very broad interest, and it helps me to kind of understand every science a little bit and break it down to the normal person. Yeah, that's basically it.
Well, you guys are true OGs, and thank you for outlining what Research Hub is. I like the parallel with the Reddit for science. That's kind of very easy to imagine. But maybe before we proceed into discussing more how Research Hub works, I would just like to double click a bit more on like what the current problems in science really are, especially maybe for people who don't have a scientific background and don't really understand how the whole a research, discovery, publishing process works? Like, what are the biggest bottlenecks there? And maybe also to Stillman the other side a little bit, like, what are the things that you guys think traditional science does really well?
Yeah. So I'll try to like do like a little flow chart, without having a visual flow chart here. So, and I'll speak for generally like the US, because that's where I'm based. Um, so the way it works here is, because as citizens of the US, there are taxes that get, taken from everybody. Those taxes get pooled and then earmarked for various different things. One of the biggest funding agencies in the US is called the NIH. There's also quite a bit of there's the NSF as well. And then there's obviously different private funding organizations. So these funding bodies, their job is to essentially take the funds that are given to them from the taxpayers and say, where are we going to distribute this to? So they have kind of, I'll call it somewhat of a dilemma on their hands of like, how do you decide? And a lot of people who have capital that want to distribute it have this problem, which is, who do I distribute this to? What metrics? What kind of credentials? What are the things I look at to do it? They go based off of a few things, but one of the big things is kind of bibliometrics. Bibliometrics are, as a researcher, if I'm going to go and publish my work into a journal, I get people who are going to cite my work. And those citations are kind of like my currency as a scientist. So when the NIH is saying, I want to give this money from the taxpayers to somebody, they're using citations as one of the big markers for that. So then they distribute that to the researcher, and then the researcher sits and they do the work that they've proposed to the NIH that they're going to do. So as a researcher, I go and I propose to them the work I want to do, and they say, great, that sounds like great. And as a researcher, you get cited a lot by your colleagues. I'll give you money. And so once you've received that money, you go and then do the work you're set out to do it that you proposed. Now, the problem is the work that you do, if this was like, say, open source like software or something like that, you would upload the data, it would be on a public repo, and you would upload the data incrementally, and that would be viewable for everybody. So the problem is, for researchers, you don't do that. You actually take the information, you hoard it for multiple years, so nobody sees it. You actually keep it close to the chest, and then you release it all at once so you can publish it into a journal. So this is where some of like the underlying problems are, is this like oligopoly of publishers and journals that kind of have set the incentive such that you need to bundle all of your work all together, and that takes often multiple years to do it, and get it uploaded to this journal. And the point is, these journals have like a level of prestige that you try to get to, so that way you can then in turn go get more funding from the NIH because you've published in a really high quality journal and all your colleagues are citing you. So researchers have now like optimized their behaviors to maximize for citations. So that's like at its core, like the big problem is the funding incentives and the publishing incentives all point to this idea that you just need to keep getting citations. So to get citations, oftentimes researchers are falsifying data, fabricating data, they're massaging some of the values in a way where it's halfway true, halfway false. And so they're doing all these behaviors in an effort to improve their ability to get future funding. But in nowhere, and this is one of the core problems we think, in nowhere is it incentivized to try to get your work to be able to be reproduced. So, one of the things we do at ResearchHub is like incentivize things like providing open data, incentivizing pre-registrations, which are you put up your data in public upfront, and you kind of abide by the methodology that you stated in that document. So we think you kind of at its core, like this drive to just get citations is a really big problem. And we would like to incentivize, just like the kind of the NIH is incentivizing people to continue to get citations, we would like to incentivize people to do things like provide open data, incentivize them to pre-register some of their work, to publish open access, things like that. So that would, in my opinion, would be some of like the core problems. And then I think some of the things that have been done right is without a doubt like the level of like rigor that goes into the actual construction and experimental design of like the science itself. The science is extremely rigorous, and I think if there wasn't this overlay of needing to publish in these high profile journals, there would be much less kind of data manipulation and falsification. So yeah, that'd be my 2 cents.
I would actually kind of say that some of the rigor is getting lost due to the incentives, right? Like sometimes when you publish a paper that is not you want to publish a paper and you don't have significant results, then researchers engage in questionable research practice like hypothesizing after the data is collected, right? Which actually is not very rigorous, but gives you the appearance of a significant result. And that's why things like pre-registration actually are there to increase the rigor, to like hold somebody accountable before they do the data analysis, so that they cannot hypothesize after they have already collected the data and create basically a lot of false positive things that seem like they are real effects statistically, but that are not actually real effects. And so I do agree though that a lot of rigorous science has still existed even within this paradigm, because you can get citations for actually high quality science. Um, so there's also rigor, but I just wanted to explain that I think that their incentives actually can be basically mal-aligned with the actual rigorous scientific pursuit that adds knowledge to our catalog. And one of the things that I think is going wrong there is this kind of what is called the publish or perish, and what used to be closed access. Like closed access is still a thing where I think publish or perish is just the pressure for people to, you have to publish or you're going to lose your career. And because publishing has certain conditions, like journals have certain preferences for certain articles, and that is positive and exciting findings, kind of like stuff that is unexpected. And that kind of pushes researchers to only publish positive findings and make sure that their findings seem positive when they are not. And this creates these false positives. So things that look like they are true effects on paper, but that are not actually true effects when you try to study again. And maybe to illustrate that for like every viewer, it's like imagine Galileo Galilei goes onto the Tower of Pisa and he's like, look guys, I figured it out. These two balls of different masses, they will fall at the same time. Aristotle was wrong. Trust me, guys. It's a law. It's a law of motion that I have discovered. Everything is going to be accelerated at the same speed. And then basically he puts them up, lets them fall. They fall at the same time. Everybody hails Galileo, right? But if they go up the next day and they let the same balls fall from the tower and they don't fall at the same time anymore, then we're going to say, Galileo, that's not a law. Like this was a single observation where this kind of rang true, but what happened today, you know? And that is kind of the problem here, that when we have some of the studies, they come out and we treat them sort of like they are Galileo's findings of that kind of prove a law. But when we do the same study again and the balls don't fall at the same time anymore, we have to recognize, that what we saw was not a law, and we have to treat this more like an observation. Yeah, so I think that's one of the problems here, that basically this pressure to publish and that exists in the careers, and you can't really make a career of finding stuff that doesn't work. You have to basically prove things that work. And then I think the other problem is like with the access. So it used to be the case that journals would basically sell subscriptions to libraries, and they still do this. But back then it meant that you basically, the taxpayer is funding the experiment through the NIH, for example, in the medical field, as Jeff has explained, and other funding bodies in other fields. And in the whole world, like the NIH just operates in the US, but in the whole world, kind of often it's government funding that funds these academic researchers. And then they publish this research, but after they publish it, they lose access to their own manuscript. And the journal has now claimed the right to it, and they sell it back to the same universities that have done the research and have been funded, and the universities take taxpayer money to pay for the subscription to their own research that they have produced. And that's kind of a little bit absurd. So people have been pushing back against it, and it became a big movement called the open access movement. And now they basically pay the journals before they publish or like when they get accepted, they pay the journals so that the paper is open for everybody to read, including the taxpayer. But now you pay basically, instead of for subscribing to it afterwards, you pay basically beforehand so that everybody can read along. And that's another big problem, because access kind of is a requirement to even be part of the conversation. And especially across the whole globe, if we want to collaborate as a scientific community across the whole world, it creates real barriers for people in lower income regions to participate in the scientific discourse, because they can't follow the conversation that is behind paywalls. And that's another problem that still exists, and it actually is a big problem also for the libraries, where they run into like runaway costs. Like, it's getting more and more expensive because the publishers have a sort of a monopoly on the high value, high reputation journals, and that allows them to like raise the prices. And yeah, that's another problem that we're also trying to solve. We're trying to make it more efficient and therefore cheaper for people to publish. And I think when it comes to what is going right, if I'm thinking about this, it's like I in the end, like Jeff said, there is rigor. There's a lot of science that's going right. A lot of things are actually true, and especially when you study the whole history of science, you will actually see all the things that have proven themselves over time. And that's an amazing art. It's an amazing human endeavor to see what these people have done with their minds to like create models of certain things that are actually reproducible in nature, and you can start to have an understanding of what's going on, and you can start to predict certain things, you can start to control things, and it allows us to build amazing technologies like semiconductors, or even cooler things like the future of computing, like quantum computers. Like that's just insane. Or CRISPR, how you can you can edit genes, and a lot of things have really come out of this that are just fascinating and mind-blowing. So that comes down to the good individuals inside of the system who are not cheating the system, but who are actually doing the science and succeeding on the real terms. And then they also get a lot of citations for actual good science.
I think about it like I always think about like an inhaler, or like when you take an antihistamine or something like that. Like it works. Like inhalers work within seconds, like that was developed out of like the outputs of like some scientific like based data, or like PCR was created. Like there's a lot of things that are like foundational and like very, very beneficial to humanity. But we want to like make sure the same amount of dollars can get more of those outputs instead of the same dollars that are just spinning the tires in the same place and not getting us like as far as we can go.
One way to describe what I think our mission is to like filter out the noise and amplify the signal. Because one thing that happens due to the publish to or perish paradigm is everybody's publishing and not everything is true, and people are basically flooding the internet with, or the databases of science is more than it's not really a public internet. They flood them with mediocre science or even false findings, and that creates a real problem for the person doing the research, because you have to basically do the study again, and if you're doing a whole literature research, it's kind of unfeasible to run 40 experiments just to run one.
But
And
if you run it again, then you end up actually finding out that it might not be reproducible, right? So it's basically an infinite loop.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is oftentimes this is called the desk drawer problem, where a bunch of people have actually reproduced the work, but because there's no incentive to publish reproduced work, journals want you to publish new novel information. So then people never surface the reproduced work anywhere. So now it's been reproduced 10 times across different labs across the world, but then the 11th lab says, "Oh, I wonder if this reproduces. Let me test it again in-house." And again, those are all the taxpayer dollars coming into each of those 11 labs. And all of them are doing the same exact work, but nobody is surfacing the information. So there's like a whole downstream set of problems. And we can talk about this probably for the whole time. But anyway.
Yes, I think you gave a really good overview of what the problem is. It sounds pretty convoluted, and I'm already hearing a lot of parallels here with the rest of crypto. I hear you say that there's a lot of very smart people with very good intentions, but there is a system that's often kind of holding them back from achieving optimal results. I'm also hearing that there is lack of transparency, and I'm also hearing that the incentives are kind of not aligned. So that rings a lot of bells here. And then let's just jump straight into how Research Hub addresses this specifically. So maybe on the incentive side of things. So how do the incentives you have set up for Research Hub ensure that people are behaving differently, like you said, publishing research much earlier on, publishing findings which are not validating new exciting hypotheses as expected? Like how do the incentives work here?
Yeah, and so great question. And I think one of the strengths of Research Hub, so we have a token incentive model. I think everyone and that's a crypto person in the audience will, understand what that is. But we have two different crowds. We have the crypto group and then we have the traditional academic group that doesn't quite know about this. So the token incentive model, we have a distribution of 4% through the platform per year. So 5% total to the community, 4% through to the platform. And that 4% can be earmarked, via governance vote every year for various things and behaviors. So this ultimately is going to be up to the scientific community at large on what they want to decide gets earmarked. So the governance kind of for that aspect gets kicked out over to the community. But what we've been doing in the past is really marking three different things. And in the past, it's really been two, and this year will be three. So one of them that we've been incentivizing is this idea of peer review. So peer review is a kind of notoriously difficult problem in the traditional space. So what peer review is when I'm a researcher and I go to publish my work to the journal has to quality control that work somehow. So what they say is, hey, researchers in this field, can you come in here and review this paper that's submitted to us? We're not going to pay you for the work. You have to come and do this voluntarily for us. The researcher that's submitting their work, they're going to pay us money, but you're not going to see any of that. But please come and quality control it. And so, unsurprisingly, with kind of this increase in production of papers that are funneling in through these journals, there just aren't enough peer reviewers that are available to quality control that work. And a big problem with that is an incentive problem. There's no incentive for the peer reviewer to come in and quality control the work. So the knock-on effect of this is papers are getting stuck in the queue for anywhere from multiple months to even couple years, where they're not getting published because simply the journals don't want to pay the reviewers to come and quality control the work. So one of the big things that we've gotten a lot of traction on at Research Hub is developing a peer review marketplace. So what we do is we essentially allow in a bounty style people to come and incentivize with Research Coin, other researchers to come and peer review or do this kind of quality control check on the papers. And that's been probably our biggest kind of driver of usage on the platform. So we, rough numbers for this, we have about 170 peer reviews happening per week on the platform. Our average time to peer review is 10 days. So again, this is juxtaposed against the traditional system, which is multiple months to like a couple of years even at times. So yeah, so that's kind of one place where we're distributing money and trying to fix the incentives. The other one is for author rewards, and this is when an author publishes a paper, they can publish it anywhere, doesn't have to be natively. If the paper is open access, they become entitled to earn some amount of research coin for their paper. Then we add a multiplier if there's open data associated with that paper. And one big problem again is most of the raw data is not uploaded in tandem with the paper. So you could think of this like if I was a financial auditing firm and I went to your company to audit your company, and you gave me one piece of paper at the end and you said, I made $8 million this year. And then as an auditor, you say, wait, hold on. I need to see all of the paper trail and all of the things that led you to make that $8 million. And you say, I'm not uploading that. The auditor can't do their job. So in a similar fashion, if the open raw data is not available with the publication, then the peer reviewers can't appropriately and thoroughly quality control the work. So we also try to incentivize with a multiplier for people to upload that open data. And then finally, there's a third multiplier for if you pre-register your work. So that is if before you even started doing any of the work, at the beginning, upfront, you clearly defined all of your methodology in a public document, and you kind of abided by what your pre-registration outlined. Then there's a 3x multiplier on that. So that's how we're driving incentives a little bit to incentivize things that ultimately result in more reproducible behavior and open, transparent data, as well as open and transparent publications, as well as making it more efficient by actually paying peer reviewers so they can come and quality control the stuff and not bottleneck any of the information.
I have a question, Jeffrey. So
Yes.
if I'm a researcher, right, and I want to publish a paper on the Research Hub, and I want to, get some research going, I also want to add the data with it as a bundle, want to get the multiplier. Who actually will evaluate, that I'm eligible for this bounty, and who actually provides this bounty, right? Is it you guys, or is it like a DAO around it, how the economics of it actually work? Because, from my point of view, I would just come and publish a bunch of random researchers on the platform to just claim the bounties, right? And a bunch of miscellaneous data that might not be actually related. So how do you actually, make the economics of the process work?
Yeah. So right now the distribution of how much research coins. So if you like in your example, Oliver, you said if I go publish miscellaneous work, and by the way, this doesn't need to be published natively on ResearchHub. As long as it's open access anywhere, you publish it as a preprint on bioRxiv, you publish it even in a journal, as long as it's open access, you're eligible. But there is like a system of, we're basing it right now simply off of citations. So if you uploaded something and got no citations on it, you wouldn't earn any research coin. If you had a lot of citations on that, then you would earn more research coin. And this is based off of something called Zipf's law, is like kind of the distribution mechanism that we went with it. So and then the economics. So like I said, we have a distribution of 4% of our token supply per year through the platform. Then this supply is what's kind of incentivizing and funding all of these things, and the author claims is one of those things. So ultimately, kind of our goal from the Research Hub side is to have inflows of research coin coming in via various kind of tools and services that the platform offers to offset this emission rate that's coming out. So we can continue to sponsor and subsidize these things.
So I would love to dig into some of the juicy stuff. And so my question would be, what kind of traction have you guys been getting with all of this so far? And then can you give us an example of some, I don't know, your favorite piece of research that has been shared on Research Hub so far that otherwise wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have been seen by the world?
Yeah, I can provide you every week we upload to our team the entire set of metrics. So I can tell you guys exactly some of the metrics here. So, peer review wise, we've had almost 5,000 peer reviews in total. Really, this has happened mostly over the last 9 months or so. So this is for reference on track with approximately as much as like Science or Nature or some of those big journals. We'll do roughly around that volume of peer reviews per year. So we're really excited about that. We've had a few submissions into a ResearchHub native journal that we've created. So we've had our first 3 submissions, which is really exciting. And we have a total of about a little bit over 100,000 users that have been registered or signed up on our platform. And only recently we've developed like a verification system. So we're now starting to document actual verified users, so we can have a little bit more confidence that like those users are real bona fide scientists. So that's really exciting. So yeah, those are just like a few off the top of my head that we're like focusing on that are driving up pretty well. And again, we do about 170 peer reviews a week, which is quite good. We've distributed quite a bit of capital to these reviewers. And then what was the other question? I can't remember.
Um, I would love to hear an example of some research study, something exciting that has been published on Research Hub that otherwise wouldn't have been published.
Yeah, give us your favorite one, right?
The one that comes to mind just off the top of my head is pre-registration on the like validity of mouth taping, right? So these are like a little bit more like something that's in like the public zeitgeist that people have probably heard about. And so that was uploaded by user Maya Adar. So yeah, that one to me is something that you conventionally wouldn't see. There's a lot of things on Research Hub that you probably would see out in the world. It's just that we can get them funded a lot quicker or we could get it published a lot quicker. But then there's stuff that's, I think, a little bit more in on the fringes, and that would be one of them. There was another one from one of an editor that was on Research Hub, Alexander. He created his own journal, and he called it latent space. And it was to touch on these topics that are generally like slightly overlooked or kind of in between big topics that people generally talk about and fund. So he called it latent space and discussed a few topics within kind of the crevices of scientific research.
What are some of those topics?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Johnny, do you remember any of the ones that were brought up there? Or do you have any other ones that you're excited about?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was in latent space myself. But yeah, like Jeff said, it was a lot about more exploring these different things that are less talked about in science. So he was basically making a broad claim, and that's why we don't remember the individual details. Um, but I think some of the coolest studies that I have seen is really also in the pre-registration domain, where we actually fund these pre-registrations. So one study that Research Hub funded that I found really cool was there was a guy, he maintained a repo for analyzing I think it was MRI data. So that's like brain scan data. And he made a simulator for this stuff. And the simulator that was currently used in the literature, it was running on CPUs. So he wrote a new software that would make the whole thing run on GPUs and therefore make it way faster and make it way quicker to iterate and make more models faster. And I thought that was pretty cool to fund basically an open source tool that the whole community of brain scientists can use. There's probably even more specialists, probably only those people who work with this domain of the brain they can use. And then was another cool pre-registration in the same domain. Maybe here my psychology bias is showing because it's again about the brain, where basically this woman, she was also writing software for analyzing spectroscopy data. So spectroscopy is I don't know if I'm saying this right, by the way. Please forgive me if I'm butchering the name here, but it's a method that allows you to not only look at the brain and like still, but you can actually basically through the spectrum of light that the things give reflect back, you can see which metabolites are in which parts of the brain, and you can really basically get a different insight of the whole brain rather than just the oxygen flow that you get from a classical fMRI. And I thought that was a really cool method, and she wrote the tool to make that more reproducible, because this method has a problem that it's not reproducible, and therefore it can't go into the clinic, even though already you can foresee that if it will be reproducible, it will have many applications. So she was making it easier for people to have like a common method section so that everybody was aligned on how to analyze this data, how to go about these data, and hold each other accountable. I thought that those were pretty cool, like more advancing the technology inside of the fields. And yeah, ResearchHub made it possible. That was something I found cool. And one last thing, the third one, which is not yet out, but which I find super cool, is that often when there's some kind of like big event on Twitter, that galvanizes the community, especially the ResearchHub community, and then they want to basically investigate these questions. So there's this recent thing from Mark Andreessen where he posted that reposted somebody else who wanted to investigate 1,000 papers with AI. So to check whether AI can peer review papers. And for that, you have to compare the performance of AI to human performance. And ResearchHub is in a prime position to do this because we have all these human peer reviewers, and we have some experts in AI in the community. And so they really got together and they built a whole like workflow to test this. And basically that gave a whole push to have more like AI peer reviewing tools and see what is their capacity. So I think that's pretty cool. There's going to be a pre-registration on that coming out soon, and I'm pretty excited for that. So there's another cool one, but I don't want to take too much time just talking about these things.
I'm really happy you actually tapped into AI, because I was about to ask, if AI is somewhat your enemy or somewhat of your friend, when it comes to Research Hub. If it's something, that's used by users to publish a research, without, doing the appropriate citations, or is it something that actually helps you review the user content, or you're for now, standing aside and not using it on the Research Hub? Well, what's your stance, even personally, really interested to hear that.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. So I'm working very closely with our AI researcher, Dami, Dominicus Bryan. He's really stellar. So we've been he's been working in the AI space, AI ML space and data science space for like 7 years now. So he's really much more equipped at, I think, answering a lot of the technicals than me. But to your first question, Oliver, we have a love-hate relationship with AI because we've went through like a big wave of like some of our kind of peer reviewers using AI to generate some of the reviews, and one thing I want to be clear about is we have kind of a quality control step. We allow anyone to come and peer review, but we have a quality control step of human editors that go and assess the peer reviews and make sure that we distribute kind of the research coin earnings to ones that are like of high quality, and we have kind of standardized rubrics and things for that. So it started with like a strong frustration with AI because a lot of people were hopping on and using it because you can produce a peer review really quickly. But at the time, this was maybe like 6 months to a year ago, there was a lot of hallucinations that were happening, with the AI. That kind of information was very superficial. And so it was really frustrating to have to like kind of go through and like, spend a lot of time processing those things. So, but I think where AI has developed into now, and I mean, it's month over month, you have some new like insane model that comes out that like really you start reassessing what's capable. And so we're hitting an inflection point right now where you can produce a lot of really credible work very, very, very quickly. So what would take a peer reviewer, 4 to 6 hours to do, a lot of AI reviews kind of can get to 70-80% of that, of the information in there in like a minute. And it costs like 50 cents to run this review. So what we're finding is, and we're looking very deeply at kind of this idea. So we have AI agents across different domains, fields of expertise. So for example, if someone were to upload a paper and that paper, contained, it was a study on the brain, but it looked at viruses that were in the brain, and they looked at like sections of the brain, like histology sections. So we would have an AI agent that would go in there as an AI editor, assess the paper, and say, hey, which 3 AI peer reviewers do we need to get? Okay, we need to get an AI neuroscientist, we need an AI virologist, and we need an AI pathologist to look at the sections that were in there. So we have those systems internally, and we're testing them, and they do a fairly good job, I would say. And one of the big things that they're much better at than humans, and what this pre-registration is going to try to quantify, we're probably going to push it live tomorrow. So what it's going to quantify is like how robust are findings from AI reviewers versus human reviewers. And the hypothesis is that the AI reviewers are going to be very good at documenting kind of mathematical errors, statistical errors, even little nuanced errors like did someone, miss a citation? Did they cite something wrong? Things like that. And then the humans might still be good at the interpretation of the information that's being output. So, and I mean, even for like some other work we're looking to do, we generated a whole systematic review on kind of autism spectrum disorder and vaccines. This is kind of resurfaced back into the conversation online. So, using AI to just generate a whole systematic review was almost spot on. So those are some ways that we're using it right now. There's a lot of internal tools that we have developed as well too to help us like screen for our editors, help us screen faster the peer reviews rather than them manually checking. There's certain metrics that will pop up for them with AI, capable to compare 2 different reviewers and take a lot of things into account.
So are we settled? Are we able to settle the discussion on the spot? Do vaccines cause autism?
Yeah, we can settle it. They do not cause autism. It's like pretty robust, and we prompted, and again, we kind of have a lot of human component here, but we prompted the O1 Pro with deep research and told it, hey, please be as unbiased in your selection criteria as possible for any papers, and even with that, pointed to the fact that autism spectrum disorder is not caused by vaccines. So there you go, audience.
Well, that's a real sigh of relief to know that. But I would love to continue the kind of futurism discussion. And what I'm really curious about is in your minds, 10 years in the future from now, if ResearchHub, if the whole open science, decentralized science movement is successful, like what does the scientific field look like? Is it about all the scientists that we have currently just cooperating more effectively? Is it about also bringing more people who are not participating in science into the field? Is it about accelerating the rate of scientific progress and just discovering much more new stuff much faster? Is it all of those things? Is it something else?
D, all of the above. We want to have kind of more the layman understanding what's going on in kind of scientific discovery and even scientific interpretation. I think a lot of AI tools are going to help democratize that for a lot of the layman people. So I think that's going to be really great. The scientists right now, if you think about them, they're really like content creators, right? Like so, if a musician produces their work, they often get paid for the work that they produce. Right now, scientists do not get paid any money for the work that they're producing, right? So I think ideally in DeSci, being able to, again, for anyone providing value, having them receive some commensurate amount of value in return for the work they're doing. That doesn't exist right now, and I hope that in 5 to 10 years we have a system of attribution and then value distribution that is a lot more fair and kind of, commensurate with the work that's being done. And then, of course, just getting this work out, a lot quicker and much more efficiently, like funding and information and all of that to get distributed quickly. I was yesterday on Sunday, I was doing a brainstorm session with Domi, our AI researcher, and we're kind of drafting, a multitude of different features that we want to build out. And we added two columns, column B and column C. And in column B, it's does this improve reproducibility? And then column C, does this improve trust? And we don't want to produce any features or content or anything that doesn't check off both of those boxes. So ultimately, we just want to make sure that those things are being checked off with whatever decisions we do going forward. And I think if we do that, we get kind of the meat and potatoes of what we'd like to solve, which is reproducibility and maximize the trust. And then everything else is a bonus beyond that.
I can only agree here with Jeff that it's really all these things. You can see that already in what's happening now, that if you project that trend, that's literally kind of going to happen. So what Jeff, like when you say about integrating like traditional researchers and more, let's say, outsiders. So Jeff was referencing Maya Ada's study, and Maya Ada, I happen to know her, and her thing is really she says non-institutional science about what she's doing. So it's like people who are outside of the classical system, but they on the website they are collaborating with people that I was referencing. Like I told you about the spectroscopy tool, and that was a person who studies at who I think teaches at Harvard Medical School, and so there you can see how like both sides are basically coming together in these decentralized science tools and just collaborate on the knowledge that they have. And I think that will also like add AI will kind of add to this more and more. Like when I talk to Domi about like his view on AI, he talks about a whole cloud labs where basically you tell the AI to optimize a molecule for this and this purpose, and then it will run the experiments in a cloud lab until it has your specifications. And basically, these kind of things are, I think, maybe not in 10 years, because I don't know, Domi would probably answer this more realistically than I can. But what I can see is really this, everybody coming together more efficiently around the knowledge that excites them, because we are kind of amplifying the signal, and that can be from all sides. So that, and then at the same time, the value flow is kind of unlocked because we can fund studies in pre-registration. So what is interesting to the scientists will become more easily fundable by scientists and audience, people who are interested in this knowledge, and make it easier to fund stuff rather than having it go through this bureaucratic system that exists now, where it's kind of top-down controlled. There's there's like going to be a bottom-up search for knowledge from the interested parties, be it the scientists or be it the people who want to have these findings. Like this could be patients who suffer from a certain disease, or this could be business looking for certain solutions to whatever problems they have. So I think that will be unlocked, and I'm pretty confident that in 10 years we're going to see a lot more value being channeled through the decentralized channels to the science that the bottom-up movements want to see.
So I think that you guys have perfectly explained, what is the mission of ResearchHub, and Jeffrey, thanks for tapping into, building both the reproducibility and the trust. I think that is very important with what you guys are building, and actually shows the perfect alignment with the problem you both have actually experienced in your life before as scientists and researchers. So as we're approaching actually the end of our time, I think we should just take, last 5 to 7 minutes to do a quick round of like flash questions that people might be actually interested in. So I guess I'll just start with the one that actually interests me the most, and hope you can guys give me, sort of a short answer. What is the current, user base? So how many researchers you have? What is the size of the people contributing actively to the platform? Because you mentioned the time, how long it takes to have a peer review done on the Research Hub, but how many researchers actually publish daily on our platform?
Yeah, so like I said, for peer reviews, we have about 170 peer reviews done per week. Those 170 reviews are done by about anywhere from like 70 to 100 unique reviewers. So keep in mind, these are like kind of hardcore, bona fide, they have to, they don't have to. Anyone can do a peer review, but many of them have kind of PhDs and are postdoc level or associate or assistant professor level. So also like the kind of quality of like credential of person there is also like really great. We're really excited about that. Um, and then verified. So we have, again, weekly active contributors as one of our metrics. And now we're starting to filter for verified weekly active contributors. So these are people who have like verified their identity going through like a persona check. So on that, we have anywhere from 200 to a couple thousand, depending on what's bringing in the attention from people on X or on LinkedIn. We have a pretty big top of funnel on LinkedIn. So when we put up a job post for our peer reviewers, we get about 100 to 200 applications a day for that. So, and then, yeah, we have, like I said, I think a total of something over 100,000 signed up users on the platform. But that's like a blend of probably some spam or bots, plus bona fide researchers and validated kind of people who are maybe more laymen.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's take like 2 or 3 more questions, but really rapid fire, maybe 30 seconds answer each. And maybe this one is for Johnny. What do you think scientists or researchers can do to communicate science better and get more lay people excited?
I think just simplify, use different words, than like stop using jargon and just explain it with like actual words. And yeah, that's the main thing. Just like there's so many words in science that only mean something to the specialist. So try avoid using them and describe what they stand for.
Perfect. Last question, another one. So something we didn't tap into much. How does the Research Hub actually incentivize people that publish there and earn in bounty?
They get incentivized with Research Coin, actually Research Coin and reputation. We have a reputation system as well too. So they get incentivized with those two things. Those are the two levers, and they can be incentivized again to publish open access, open data, pre-register their work, and also be incentivized to do peer reviews.
Okay, last question, fun one. Which scientist, dead or alive, would you choose to have dinner with? You can both answer.
I would sit with Einstein. He is like German, I am German, and he has done the most like he has seen everything in physics from quantum to relativity, and he understands them both. So I would love to talk with him and his perception on time and space. And I would ask him about Kant and be like, hey, how do you think Kant and your theories relate? Because as a philosopher, I have to know. And I'll challenge him and say, Gödel said that you didn't see that Kant actually foresaw your theory. So what do you say about that? Let's debate. Let's debate.
I would love to be part of that conversation. And what about you, Jeffrey?
Um, uh, Probably Satoshi.
Oh, it's an interesting one.
It's an interesting take, that he kind of is a scientist, right? He came up with something new, some of a modern scientist. And many people wouldn't say, a scientist, rather, developer or mathematician. But I think that's a cool, that's a cool answer. Would also definitely love to be at the table if we knew who Satoshi was. All right. I think that this was an excellent episode. Thank you guys for explaining us, all about Research Hub. I think it's been really exciting. I've been personally following you from the early days of DeSci, as I already said off record at the beginning of our call, and it's been amazing to have such OGs on the podcast. And I guess I'll just give you the chance to tell us some final closing thoughts, what you would like to address to the audience. Perhaps if someone from the audience is a researcher and is listening to this, what are the steps he can make to start publishing on Research Hub?
Yeah, I would say for one, just follow on all like the different social medias. Johnny does an extremely great job putting all the content out there for everybody so they can see. I would say just go and log into researchhub.com and just click the sign up button. It's a one click, sign in with email or Google or something like that, and just start browsing the website. You're going to find something that probably like resonates with you. So if you want to be a peer reviewer, you can go filter for any open bounties for peer review. If you want to go publish, click the publish button. There's the funding tab. You can go put in, a pre-registration, get some work funded that you want. It's crowd-funded. So just go dabble.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having us. This was fun to like talk about Research Hub and decentralized science for an hour. And yeah, when it comes to the people, Jeff basically said it all. It's like go to the socials, follow the socials, be part of the conversation, go to Research Hub, sign up. And I want to see cool, interesting proposals that you guys have, stuff that you're working on. Publish your preprints, publish questions and ideas. And yeah, let's debate some interesting science.
Thank you guys. This was really fun. Yeah, we can wrap it here.